UBS downgraded Tesla, then Citibank upgraded Tesla, and then finally Bill Gross, the famous investor from PIMCO, has basically given a downgrade on he called deteriorating fundamentals. So we want to review this today because we're heading into the 24th earnings, and there's a lot of things to consider as we enter this earnings period for Tesla from a bunch of different angles. Obviously, the difference of opinion. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show, would like some better ideas on investing and trading, please join us on Patreon. Also wanted to shout out to those of you posting questions. I had a great question on ChatGTP trading, which I'll add on to this, and we'll be saying more of it about that stuff over time. So the first thing is I want to thank the Semi for joining us here, both in a schematic, as you see over my shoulder, as well as I think it's a 1/28th scale model. The next thing I wanted to, or the first of the items that I'd like to cover is that we're now in pre-earnings periods. So the way things work is that there are a large number of analysts, and they typically follow the companies that are most invested in and traded in by large institutions and hedge funds. So what's going on right now is that all of those analysts are kind of making their bets on what they think is going to happen relative to the earnings of all the companies that are involved. So my objective today is sort of preview those earnings to some extent based on what's going on with the upgrades and downgrades. So let's start with the upgrade. In this case is from Citibank. Citibank is arguing that the initiatives that are related to the AI, FSD, full self-driving, and in this case, they would blend in what's happening with Optimus into the whole AI space. So their argument is that based on all of this, they see stock going higher, in the 50 to 100 point range pretty reasonably based on all these new revenue streams hitting. And so I would say that I would agree with the fact that there's a lot of great stuff happening, and those great things are going to portend a lot higher stock price for Tesla as a result. Now, something very interesting happened from a company called UBS, because UBS is going in the opposite direction. Tesla stock price is right now approximately $250 a share. UBS is saying that they're upgrading Tesla from about $150 to $197 a share, and they're moving the stock from a hold to a sell so it can get back to $197. Now, I was kind of surprised to see this, and their argument was that just like Citibank is arguing that those new revenue sources are going to boost the stock, the argument from the folks at UBS is that they're saying that the potential of those new revenues has been unseen, unproven, and therefore unknown, and therefore can't be relied upon by anybody relative to adding value, adding a reason to buy Tesla stock at the current point. Now, I could kind of see this, and the reason for several reasons. Number one, we've talked about the fact that Elon has been talking about full FSD and the potential of it generating huge new revenue, and therefore the stock price would boom. The challenge is that there's no place it's being tested yet, and therefore going from simply creating the software to marketplace without testing that allays the fears of regulators, et cetera, that kind of makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen any sort of additional revenue coming from that space along those lines of the robo-taxis that Elon has talked about. So one could see sort of the basis for the UBS argument. I don't agree, but he definitely has a valid argument, which is you got to show me it working, it generating real revenue that adds. So the question then is, where do I land and why relative to the movement of Tesla's stock price? Well, the one other data point that one has to bring forward here is just the fact that it was just announced that Tesla's down to 50% market share. So that suggests that there are a large number of others that are entering the space with cars that people are buying. Now, one of the statistical points from the last quarter that I think is going to be fleshed out when we get earnings is how badly was Hertz selling the 100,000 Teslas going to hurt Tesla's numbers. It didn't this quarter. Maybe they didn't sell all the cars, or they sold, but the sop-up effect was not there. I kind of felt like Tesla should have bought those vehicles and sold them as refurbished, because then they could have controlled the market for prices. That was not done, so we'll see how that goes in the analysis. So one of the subsets of what's going on here is the destructive capability of Elon relative to the hedge funds that are shorting the company. I'm of the opinion, after doing some chats with Tesla employees, etc., that there's something very, very interesting brewing, which is new data that's going to jack everything. So the argument that was made by a good friend, a former Tesla employee, was that he thinks that Optimus is in small numbers being used currently in the Fremont plant. That plant's chosen obviously because the engineering facilities for it are in Palo Alto primarily, but they're also Optimus in the engineering facility that's attached to the plant as well. So what I believe there's a secret weapon that's going on. And the secret weapon that I learned was that, according to him, he thinks Tesla is capable of producing as many as 5,000 Optimus robots a week. And right now. So if that's the case, once Elon determines that it's viable within the plant, he can go from what he stated was the 3 months ago to 20, 30, 50, hundreds if he so chose. And my estimation is that by this time next year, that would be July, end of second quarter, I think there's going to be at least 300 to 500 of these things in all the Tesla plants. Perhaps not China because the cost of people is so low there. But I do believe we're going to see it in Fremont, as well as in Houston, as well as in Germany. And Germany is somewhat of a maybe because it is a unionized shop in many ways. So the answer that comes up then is, or the argument against the Tesla stock price being dramatically higher, is that unless there are numbers that can be attached in terms of revenue numbers from what Tesla does, it doesn't add anything. Well, the numbers kind of show up in an interesting way relative to Optimus at the Tesla facilities. And that is that it was pointed out that Tesla cut 15,000 people, let's say over the last 4 months. And instead of the number of vehicles dropping, they actually rose. And the argument that I was told is that it shows that the robots are doing their jobs, and that's without Optimus. Now we add Optimus, and we have a further hand of the work from human beings to robots, so the company can actually do more volume on lower people. So I also think it's kind of interesting because as Elon gets into a cost of goods sold battle with large automakers around the world, most, if not all of them, are unionized. And so as they try to compete with Tesla, that's going to be interesting because they just don't have the ability to drop their costs in the similar way that Tesla is. So one of the other things that's going on here that's noteworthy that you should be aware of in sort of the does Optimus add real numbers battle is that whenever you look at trading, short-term trading calls for us to say what's happening, in the last few weeks and what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. And that's where you can make your money as a trader typically. Well, I think we're in an interesting period right now because if Elon admits that he has the capability to do large numbers of Optimus and that he's starting to deploy them in all the factories, each employee that's replaced by a robot represents huge new revenue or a lowering of cost of goods sold for the company, but there are no benefits. Those employees can't be laid from work. They could get fired, I guess, but clearly Elon is disincentivized to fire them. My general point here is that Tesla is becoming its own internal customer for the Optimus machines or robots. And so as that happens, we're going to end up with a situation where it's going to drop to the bottom line in interesting ways, therefore giving Tesla lower cost goods sold, and now gives the opportunity for other entities that may not be competitors to come in and determine utility of bringing those robots into their operations. I've seen different situations where they're involved in farming, in the hydroponic situation. I've seen them in restaurants picking up, delivering food, giving the waiters and waitresses an extra hand, fewer people needed because of clearing plates as well as taking food to customers. And I've just seen a lot of ways in which they're being used successfully. So the argument that I'm making then is that I really think the upgrade of Tesla is appropriate because, you'll find that the supercomputers or let's say NVIDIA machines are helping the work that's being done when it comes to Optimus. And then Elon is ordering chips there to be used in a lot of different ways, likely in the brain capabilities of those machines. So what I'm hunting for here is the fact that there's been a lot of situations that are confirmed where we've seen activity by Tesla that Elon is doing a lot of research and doesn't ever deliver anything. And those deliveries result in the marketplace saying, we're not clear you're ever going to get this done, so we want to be cautious about whether or not we're going to invest in you, assuming that it's going to be profitable. As I mentioned in the last show and other shows, I really believe that we're in a position right now where, there's a chance that Tesla could explode, and Elon's efforts with ChatGPT and the chips he's working with potentially generates new revenue and new business possibilities we actually don't see yet. So that's another lurking possibility that's out there. So overall, what my argument is that the 24th earnings are going to be good because we know what their sales numbers are, but I think they'll be spectacular because we're going to finally find out how powerful the presence of Optimus will be. And I haven't even brought up the fact of Elon said he's going to keep those entities within the company in terms of sales initially, but if the price offered for Optimus at locations other than Tesla is large enough and they're willing to test out the machines, it wouldn't be surprising for them, Elon, to allow others to use those machines as well, which again could generate a lot of new revenue. So the final point I wanted to make in this whole area is that the short-term traders, investors are looking at the next few weeks. The large institutions are working over the next 1, 2, 3 years to determine what the economic hit is going to be, positive or negative to the company. I think it's going to be positive with Optimus. And it makes up for any decline in terms of market share issues that Tesla might have on its current vehicles. So the answer is stay tuned. We look forward to what happens here. The one other question I don't get, and hopefully you guys will update us, particularly as we just had GM start being able to charge at Tesla facilities, and Ford has been able to do so for the last 6 months. What feedback would you give on your experiences with trying to get your car charged now that there are new brands they're needing to charge, wanting to charge their vehicles on Tesla facilities. I'm hoping that Tesla charges a premium so it becomes a nice stream of revenue. I don't know that that's the case, but we shall see. At any rate, I want to say my assessment is an upgrade on Tesla for the fact that I think Optimus is awesome and will add the new profit and revenue that people really want to see, that they believe will drive the stock price. At any rate, I want to thank you once again for joining us. And this is the end of our formal process of analysis relative to this. So today's show, at the end of every show, I like to do health tips. There is a gentleman who has a YouTube channel called Gooby and Dooby, Goobi and Dooby, Doobi. That gentleman is a graduate of MIT, and he was a neuro/spine surgeon named Dr. Gooby, and he quit his job. And the reason he quit his job was that he has a regimen of exercise and diet that he recommended. And what he found was that when he put his patients on that, many of them would recover enough from their back issues that they ended up calling up a week or two before their surgeries and canceling. And he's currently unemployed because he doesn't like how the health system manages to gain as much profit as possible and have patients suffering a lot is his thesis. And so I wanted to encourage you to check that out because I think you'll be impressed by the eating regimen he recommended and how it affects the body. The one slice I will give you is he said that one of his PAs one day looked at him and said, the problem I have with medicine is that there's a house that has a leak in it, and that leak has caused a whole bunch of damage to the drywall and other things. And what he said was that the type of surgery he does is like going in and replacing all the drywall, and then the leak that caused the buckling drywall and mold is the roof. And his reference to the roof is diet and exercise process sets up success or not. So a lot of his patients that he would operate on ended up with the same problem 6 months later because it was a roof leak problem, not necessarily just the damage to the walls. So I look forward to your analysis on this and opinion. Finally, I wanted to note that you'll notice that we've started including ocean sounds at the end of this. One of the concepts that Dr. Gooby mentioned was diet, exercise, meditation, and relaxing, and the impact on your body. So I wanted to note that our goal with putting, ocean sounds at the end of our show all the time is that it gives you a chance to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and relax, and enjoy the relaxation that comes from this. I also thought of the fact that most of the time I choose a video that was shot on a certain ocean. Last week, or the last show, I was doing a place called Carlsbad, California on the beach. I also have video that comes from Daytona Beach. And so those are different oceans on different coasts. And so you might want to notice the difference in sound and see, do you find it more beneficial to use one but not the other? After we're done with our regular show time is really devoted for me to have a sort of a play area of things that I think you might find useful. I have had a few folks say to me, hey, look, this is kind of neat having the ocean there because I don't live near the ocean. It gives me opportunity to enjoy what the ocean offers in terms of sound and sights, etc. So I want to make an argument that this is part of our relaxation process for you. Anyway, thanks once again for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Please remember to like and subscribe. Comments always appreciated. Ci sono hitro hoda hapas drasice ni hao arrivederci. Namaste. Salam. And in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.